Hi, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate Rural Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the station or the host. Folks, I have a special guest with me today, and I think you need to listen. Why do I talk about on this show about being proactive, about taking the time to think about planning your end of life, your loved ones, and how do you want your funeral arrangements, memorial service? Is it because I'm morbid? No. It's because we need to talk about these conversations. And when I'm going to keep talking about the uncomfortable on my show until it becomes comfortable, because we need to have these discussions. We need to bring death, dying, preparing for it out in the open. And I'm chatting with Betsy. That's what I do. And my guest with me today is Randi Goldstein. Casey. She is owner, vice president, funeral director of Goldsteins, Rosenberg, Raphael-Sacks. Did I say that right? Funeral home. Did I say that right, Randi?
Yes, pretty much. It's Raphael-Sacks.
Raphael. Sorry.
All good.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, it is, which is why we kind of just say Goldsteins. But
okay. Located in Philadelphia, Bucks County, and South Jersey. Randi is going to talk about interfaith funerals. I've heard of interfaith marriages, but I never heard of interfaith funerals, and also prearranging. And I just have to say this, folks. It's going to be in the blog, so please read the blog. I really want you to go on the website, the Goldsteins Funeral Home website, because it has phenomenal information. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you still need to prepare. And this will give you ideas. And if you are not in New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, maybe you're somewhere else, and you could get ideas to bring to your local funeral home or wherever you want to go. And maybe Randi knows some that are in other states. You never know. But Randi has been, she's a third-generation funeral director. And from 95 to 98, she was a bereavement facilitator. And she is an active member in the Jewish and local suburban communities in her area. So I want to welcome you, Randi Goldstein, Casey, to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I do quite frequently tell people, and I am a Jersey girl, so I'm very blunt, about, we plan, everything. We plan our weddings, where we want to go to college, when we want to get married, have a baby. But why is it people do not want to talk about planning their end of life and where they want to have their final resting place, or maybe they want to be cremated? I'd like to have your opinion on that, Randi.
Okay. I think part of it is that it's a scary subject. People don't want to talk about not being here anymore, and that's basically what you're talking about, the end of life. But it's not only planning for yourself, it's planning for loved ones, dear friends, whoever you're responsible for. And it's just a very taboo subject in our society, which is a shame because, unfortunately, it happens. And it does and it is a lot easier if you're able to plan for it ahead of time. And that's one of the things
Definitely.
that we really encourage, that one of our ways of explaining a prearrangement to people is that we consider it a gift to our family, that they know what our wishes are, and it just makes it easier. And we hear from families all the time, I'm so glad our parents did this because we wouldn't have known what to do. I mean, you're flying blind when a death occurs. So it's not unusual to hear that comment like, I don't know what to do, which is also our job to walk you through it and get you through it.
Yes, that's very important. I think people, Randi, don't know, how does someone decide what funeral home to go to, what should they look for with a funeral director on how to pick one out?
People do, funny enough, shop funeral homes. They'll go and they'll talk to us, or they'll call and they'll make they'll call a couple different ones in the area. Here in my area, we're kind of lucky. There's only 2 large Jewish funeral homes in the area, but, they can go to a non-sectarian funeral home or a non-Jewish funeral home as well. I think it's just what kind of rapport you get with the family, or with the director. We really pride ourselves on trying to be warm and caring for our families, and everyone's version of that is a little different, so it depends on how they perceive you, how they take your personality. But with Goldsteins, Rosenberg's, Raphael-Sacks, we do have a lot of family directors, so hopefully they're going to mesh with one of us, and we're going to get the funeral. But it's hard. And also in the Philadelphia area, people tend to be loyal. So if your family went to Goldsteins, Rosenberg's, Raphael-Sacks, then most likely you're going to use Goldsteins, Rosenberg's, Raphael-Sacks. That's just the way it seems in this community.
Yeah, that's how it is up in my community too. There's certain funeral homes that people go to for generations.
Correct. Yeah, it's a comfort thing. Like they know their parents called you and we did your grandparents' funeral, so it's just a natural. Or they know one of us. There's so many of us out there in the community, and we ensconce ourselves in the community in order to, make those relationships happen. People automatically call us, or they'll ask a rabbi where we're friendly with the rabbi, or even a cemetery. They can recommend a funeral home. So all different ways of getting families to connect with us.
I have to ask you this, Randy, because I've always been curious about this. What is the difference, other than I know, a Jewish funeral is catered to the Jewish faith, but what is the difference in, I guess, the operations? Why is it necessary for someone who's Jewish to go to a Jewish funeral home rather than a non-sectarian one? I always wondered about that.
Necessary, I wouldn't use that word. Probably easier, because you're dealing with someone of the same religion, so they understand what you're looking for and what you need, especially if you want to do what we would call an Orthodox funeral, which is the ultra-religious, and there's definitely certain things that you have to adhere to in order to do that. But it's, again, like I think, Catholic people are going to call a Catholic funeral home. Jewish people are going to call a Jewish funeral home. I think the confusion comes in when it's an interfaith marriage. And as you said in the beginning of the podcast, that you are curious about an interfaith funeral. It's not really like an interfaith marriage where it's a coming together. It's more or less your spouse dies, you're Jewish, your spouse isn't, who do I call? And what we've been trying to get out to the public is, no matter what their faith is, we can service both sides. It's not a problem. And we want to be involved, and we want to be there for you. If you want to run it more like a Jewish service, no problem. If you want to do it out of a church, absolutely no problem. We'll contact the priest. We'll do everything that we need to do, pastor, whatever. But people really feel like, oh, well, we can't be buried together. That's the other thing. There's numerous non-sectarian cemeteries where it doesn't matter what your faith is, and you can be buried next to your spouse.
Right. That's true. As I was telling you before we started to record, I'll tell the audience, my husband is not Jewish, and I am, and my in-laws had bought a plot in a non-sectarian part of a Jewish cemetery, which just happens to be the cemetery that my family is at. How ironic that was, but I had a pastor give the service, but the headstone, the plaque, I had the Jewish letter for life around it, because Matt loved the Jewish people, and he loved Israel, and it was a way for me to honor the Jewish faith and to honor that Matt loved the Jewish people. I think you can combine, have that combination.
Right. Yes, absolutely. It's, families can also be buried together in cemeteries that are have a denomination, i.e., like if you choose to be buried in a Jewish cemetery with your spouse, the only thing is the cemetery probably won't allow you to put a cross on the stone. So if that's not important to you, it's usually not an issue. It all depends, again, on the cemetery and their requirements. I mean, there's no way for us to know and until we contact them and let them know what's going on. So, but the sad part is that we can do a ton of spouses' funerals that are Jewish, and then we don't get the other spouse when they pass because the family doesn't realize we could have done it. And that's one of the things that we're trying to get out there to the public, that we can handle anything, any funeral, any time that you need us, we're there for you.
That is very good to know, because a lot of people don't realize that. In my area, I live up in the Woodbridge area, there aren't, as far as I know, any Jewish funeral homes in my area.
I'm not familiar with the North Jersey area, so I can't answer that.
Not that I know of. They're probably up, like farther north or down South Jersey, but I'm kind of in the middle, and so we used non-sectarian. I mean, for my father's parents, my mom's parents are in a very Orthodox Jewish cemetery out in Long Island, so they used the Jewish funeral home, in New York. And but my father and my brother were from a local funeral home, non-sectarian. And if someone were to contact you, Randi, and they live out of state, could you direct them to, say, if they lived, we're talking about like Florida, or they live in Florida, they're going to be buried in Florida. Do you help, could you help guide them to someplace in Florida or another state in the U.S.?
Yes, there's different networks of funeral directors associations that we belong to, and plus just knowing people in the industry. Depending on what part of Florida they're in, we can either connect you to someone that we personally know, or we could do some research for you and find someone if you're not sure how to go about doing that. That is definitely a service that we provide. We also work with funeral homes all across the country, sending bodies back to where they lived if they died out of state, and receiving bodies that have died out of state that want to be buried back in the Philadelphia area. So that's something that's part of our services. We do it on a regular basis with families and funeral homes.
That is very important to know. As people listening to this, and they could be anywhere in the United States, they can go on your website and contact you for help. I don't know, how many Jewish funeral homes there are, all over, but I think it's very important to know that if you want to have a Jewish funeral and honor your faith. And to go to one, if that's what someone prefers. I would like to discuss the prearrangements. When someone contacts you and they have to make an appointment, I'm sure, to come in, and what is that process like, Randi, to prearrange?
So a lot of times we get a call from a family. They're looking to prearrange either for an elderly relative or themselves. More and more people are taking care of their own prearrangements ahead of time. And, one of the major questions is cost. And the first thing we like to do is, well, besides cost, what are you looking to do? What type of service were you thinking about? Do you have any idea? And we start to guide them through the process. Since COVID, and doing things via DocuSign and over the phone, not everyone always has to come in. We encourage it. We think it's, nice to put a face with a name, and also that way you can see the merchandise in person. But we can do it over the phone. We can DocuSign. We can Zoom. We can do whatever. It's just learning. It's a lot of questions. It takes about an hour or so to make an arrangement. And we need to know everything about you, from information that we need for the death certificate when the death occurs, up to and not excluding, if there's a specific charity you want to make a donation to when the time comes. If you know where you're going to sit Shiva for mom and dad if you're making it for a parent. As much information as we can get ahead of time, we'll take. But the most important thing is really getting families to understand what they're doing. You're planning ahead so that when the time comes and the death occurs, your family or yourself just have to make one phone call to us, and you have to let us know that your loved one has died, where they are, and we'll start the process of getting them into our care, and then we'll go from there planning the service. But there are so many options with the service that people don't even realize.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I think people really should think about what they want their service to be like. Do you want a celebration of life? Do you want graveside services? Do you want a party after? Some people have that. How long you're going to sit Shiva for if you're Jewish? And where do you like contributions to different charities if that person wants that? Music, if the person wants music, right. Which I wish my brother would have had, but my mother told me, I don't know, I've heard music at Jewish funerals. Do Jewish funerals have music, or is that something new? Or
that's definitely a newer thing. Things have been, obviously constantly evolving. The more social media and the more techie we become, people like music. They want music played, but that's not a normal custom. Let's say if you were raised more conservative or Orthodox, you would never have music. Graveside services is something that a lot of non-Jews and a lot of people outside of this area don't really understand. That's basically where the whole entire service takes place, at the grave. There's nothing in the chapel. Something else that's become more popular in our Jewish faith is actually having either like a small viewing or what we call an identification to see mom or dad before you go to the cemetery. The other thing is, unfortunately or fortunately, cremation is a growing trend in our industry, and more people are opting for that. And a lot of that has to do with that people don't live in the same area anymore, and who wants to be bothered in their minds to go visit a grave? And that's another thing.
Yes. Yes, I was going to ask you about that, if Jewish people are getting cremated, because I know that was not allowed.
It's basically taboo, but more and more are opting for it. It is a growth in the entire industry across the nation. We personally at Goldsteins, Rosenberg, Raphael-Sacks are lucky our numbers aren't as high as other people's across the nation because a lot of Jews do not choose to cremate. But it is becoming more and more popular. But there's ways to celebrate that. You can have a service as well with that, or you can have with the body present, without the body present. There's a lot we can do there that people don't realize. You can view the person before they go to the crematory. Lots of stuff that can be done to make it feel more like a funeral and less like just a cremation. But in our industry, like music and that kind of stuff is in the Jewish faith. It's just starting to get popular and just starting to grow. Most of our services are to the point quick because in the Jewish faith, if you're religious, you can't start mourning until the body is committed to the ground, until they're buried. So that's a big issue. So
yes.
So speed is of the essence if you're Orthodox. They want to be buried as quick as possible, if they can, within 24 hours.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Which is daunting, but we get it done.
Quick, unless you have to wait. Like when my dad died, we had to wait for my sister to come in. So
there's always extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
And yes, things usually, in a normal funeral, it's usually 48 hours, give or take, maybe a little longer, depending on, and again, transient society. People don't live all in the same area anymore. So you do have to wait for relatives and loved ones to get back into town. And it happens all the time.
Yes, and then there's certain Jewish holidays that you cannot have a funeral.
Correct. Yeah, the first day of Passover, the last day of Passover, a couple of the high holidays, obviously, and then of course there's no funerals on the secular holidays either, like Christmas, New Year's. Like cemeteries are closed, so you got to work around that.
Right.
And at least in our area, that's not true in all areas, but in this area it is. So there's a lot of scheduling and stuff to be done behind the scenes. But again,
yes.
For the family, if you take care of the actual arrangement, the bulk of it ahead of time, it's less for them to have to do, and it's the other stuff is our job. That's what we do to make it easier for you. We contact the cemetery. We contact the clergy. We coordinate everything for you. You're not making 100 different phone calls. You're just calling us and putting the ball in our hands and letting us run with it.
Yeah, so that's very important. And Randy, I'm just going to talk about my personal experience. Folks, I prearranged my husband's funeral, and I went down to the cemetery and I did a payment plan, and I went to the funeral home and did the prearrangement. Now, my husband had Alzheimer's, so I knew he was going to die. Ironically, I did that in 2018, and Matt died like a little over a year later. If you are on Medicaid, or if you're going on Medicaid, and if you're going into a nursing home facility, they want you to have these prearrangements.
Yep.
It's very important, and it saves you so much time, because when your loved one who died, and your mind is in a complete fog, this is done. All you have to do is call up your funeral home and say, so-and-so passed away, and they just get the funeral director gets the ball rolling, as you said, and it's a peace of mind, really. This is funny. I know I have a twisted sense of humor, folks, but I always told Matt, I said, you're getting buried the Jewish way right after. I'm not having a wake. You're going to graveside services. Really, Matt's family isn't around, and my family is really, not around. Friends abandoned us during the illness, so I had small graveside services, and that's, how I wanted it. And I just think that I was at peace because I already had this planned, and it's so much more helpful.
I'm sure it made it a lot easier for you. Absolutely. It is a peace of mind, knowing that it's all done and you just have to make that phone call. Graveside services, when it's small, is definitely the smart way to go. You don't have to have an empty chapel with, not enough people in there or feel like it's empty. Betsy, I feel your pain. My father actually has Alzheimer's, and he's been diagnosed now it's been about 4 years, so I know it's a daunting disease to deal with.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It's all right. But, yeah, I think the hardest thing with prearranging is that people are just afraid to bring up the subject, especially even if they're ready to, they're afraid to bring it up to their family members. Like their children will say, I don't want to talk about it. Well, unfortunately, you need to, because no one's evading it. It's going to happen, unfortunately. Just a matter of when. And, being in the business that I'm in, you never know when it's going to happen.
True.
When you least expect it, it happens. So if you do have a game plan in plan, it's really not a bad thing. I have my friends and I laugh and I call us tweeners. Our kids are adults but still in their 20s, and our parents are going into their late 70s, early 80s, so we're like pulled in like a couple different directions. But even people my age are starting to think about it and maybe putting plans together to make it easier for their children. And plus, it keeps the cost down.
I was going to say that, Randy. That's true. I I had the plan for Matt's cemetery because it's real estate, folks. The price goes up.
Yep.
Every year, and prices of funerals, of course, go up. I myself, Randy, right after Matt died, I went and did my own prearrangements.
It's smart. Right. That way your wishes are down too. You don't have to worry about anyone else taking care of it for you.
Yes, I did the payment plan for Matt and I for the cemetery part, and I planned my own. It's kind of strange because you could, write out a check, whatever you want, every month is how I have it. And for some reason, I did a few checks with Matt, and I couldn't do it. I just felt so, and I shouldn't have, but I felt kind of guilty doing it. And there was no reason to feel guilty to do it, but I did. And I just said, I'll just take it out of the life insurance. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Now, with my own funeral, I have no problem writing out a check every month. Isn't that weird?
Weird, but
weird
common. It's weird, but it's common because I feel like when you're doing it for someone else, you're almost like as if you're wishing them not to be there is the thought process, even though that's not what you're thinking. What you're thinking is, I'm making this easier. What your mindset should be versus what it is. Your mindset should be that this is making it easier for when the time comes. Unfortunately, a lot of times, our mind plays tricks on us, and you're thinking, oh my God, if I do this, I'm just writing his ticket, which is not what you're doing. So I think that's where the confusion gets. And plus, it's your husband. It's personal. It's hard. It's someone that you obviously love and spend your life with, and now you're not going to. And that's a hard thing. I mean, it's daunting to have to talk about death, but unfortunately death occurs, and it is a lot easier to be a little prepared than to walk into it blindly. So
yes. I agree, Randy. I have, I did. I felt that way in writing out Matt's check. Like, I didn't even tell Matt that I was going down to do his pre-funeral arrangements. I said, well, why bother to tell him and get him upset? I think that it's very important. Now, folks, was it easy for me to go down to the local funeral home and plan Matt's funeral? It was not. I could tell you I cried all the way to the funeral home, at the funeral home, and all the way back home. And the rest of the day, I was in tears. But it was a necessary arrangement. It was a necessary task that had to be done. I knew Matt was at the end of his life. I knew it. And I did that in December 2018. December 2019, Matt was on hospice and dying during the holiday time. So I'm very grateful that I followed my instinct and I did that. And I really want to encourage the audience, let's have these conversations. It's not pleasant, that's true, but it's necessary. Dying is part of life. It's the circle of life. And
absolutely. Yeah, it's a big thing, and it's hard to talk about, but you got to break that taboo. The other thing is, if you don't let your family members know what you want or where you want to be buried or anything, that it just makes it that much harder for them because they don't have a clue to what your wishes are. And one of the things that we encourage when people do call us, if they have decided that they want to be buried, not cremated, then we really encourage them to decide on your cemetery first. Go do that because certain cemeteries have certain requirements, and if we don't know which cemetery you're going to, we can't do the requirements for you. We can't make sure we cover everything. So that's a big thing. Like, we try and get people, once you settle on what cemetery you want to use, then contact us and we'll make the appointment. And we'll, the other thing is that we also offer is we go out to people's homes to make it easier for them and make the arrangements if need be. So there's lots of options. Nice. If you don't want to come in, like I said, we could do it over the phone. We can do it via, we'll come to your house, or honestly, the best way is to come into the funeral home and see everything. But again, we understand that, if your loved one's on hospice, you don't want to leave them then don't. Spend your time with them. But what the other financial advantage is that you are locking in what we call the funeral home charges that we set. The only thing that we can't guarantee would be third-party charges, which would be like newspaper notices, flowers, clergy, that kind of stuff. But everything else is guaranteed.
Yes. Yes. I here in New Jersey, I make a check to the New Jersey Prepaid Funeral Trust.
Yes, choices. Yep.
Yes, choices, and it's and it's locked in, and I'm paying mine each month, and I think also, Randy, when people don't know, especially when a parent dies, the last parent especially, and the siblings will fight. Well, mom or dad didn't want that. Yes, they did want that. No, they didn't. Or they want you to contribute to this charity. No, they want this charity. So if people make their wishes known, it's much better. Now, I always say this, Randy, you don't have to agree with that person's decision, but you should honor it. That's the thing. Respect and honor it.
Absolutely. And things can be tweaked. Like mom and dad make a prearrangement for themselves. Dad dies first. It's a big service in the chapel, then goes to the cemetery. But mom outlives him by a number of years, and when the time comes for mom's funeral, there's just not that many people, and you feel like we want to switch it to a graveside. That's doable. It's nothing, we can tweak stuff if need be as time goes on as well. That's something that people don't realize. Just because you prearrange it doesn't mean it's set. Like you can tweak it.
Oh, that's great you said that, because I was going to ask you that. What happens if someone changes their mind?
So we've had families that have actually, they've changed like from a graveside to a chapel service because of, let's say, the time of year. They don't want to be outside in the cold for that long of a time. We've had families change it from the other way around, a graveside or a chapel to a graveside. We've had families decide that they want to run it out of their synagogue rather than in our building. We just adjust, and if there's different charges, we either refund the family the difference or they have to pay a little bit more depending on what they're picking and choosing. It's nominal compared to having to take care of a whole funeral. The other thing that people change is like, limousines, newspaper notices, that stuff gets tweaked a lot. People change their minds about that. But for the most part, things pretty much stay the same. You cannot change someone's funeral to a cremation after they've already picked burial. That's legally not allowed. That would have to be a whole thing. But for the most part, people honor their loved ones' wishes. And like I said, one of the things that we hear a lot from families is that this is truly a gift. I'm so glad mom and dad did this because it made it so much easier. Look, loss is never easy, but if you can take some of the onus off of you and the pressure of having to make decisions at a time when you're not, like you said, even able to think straight, it's a lot easier. And you did mention earlier about moving someone into like a assisted living or a nursing home. Then a lot of nursing homes require that you have a funeral in place, especially for the spend down theory, when you have to spend down their money, and that you would talk to the social worker at the home or an attorney, and they would guide you on how to do that, and we're here to guide you.
Yes, that's very important information, folks. It's really, I have to say from my own experience, it's so much better when you're prepared than when you're not prepared. And I think especially if you know someone, if you yourself were diagnosed with a terminal illness or your spouse or partner, parent, these conversations can't wait. You need to have them. And Matt wanted, he loved Johnny Cash, and he wanted the song In the Garden played. So I played it. And, just to find out what they want. I already told my son what I wanted. And I just think that if people would just say what their wishes are. After my family left my brother's funeral, my brother loved Creedence Clearwater Revival. So I played some music after my mom left so she wouldn't be upset that I was playing music. And she got upset with me because I said on Facebook, I said, I wish, there was music played. And my mother went, we don't play music at a Jewish funeral, and I don't want music at mine. I said, well, that's what you wanted. But Bradley didn't have a choice because he didn't say what he wanted at his funeral. Maybe he would have wanted music. So you get into those little problems. Oh, mom or dad wouldn't want music. Yes, they would want music. And it's could tear families apart. The simplest decisions and that they're not made can cause complications. So I just want to encourage everyone, have these conversations with your families. Mm-hmm. They're necessary. And Randi, you're another resource. I wish I knew you.
Well, if you ever need us or you ever need some advice, please don't hesitate to contact us via our website or just call us. We are available 7 days a week, and for a death call, we're available 24/7. You always get one of us. That's a big thing, and we take pride that you're dealing with us and that we try and help you and make it easier for you. And again, people, don't be afraid to bring up the subject. Just because you're talking about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. You're just trying to get ahead of it.
Yes, and it's definitely is very, very helpful. Randi, where can people contact you and go on your website and look at what Goldsteins has to offer?
Our website is our name, Goldsteins with an S, funeral.com. And you can contact me via, there's an email on there for info@Goldsteins Funeral that we check all day long and we respond to it, not a problem. Also, you can just call us. We have our phone numbers 215-927-5800. We do have an 800 number. 1-800-622-6410. And like I said, we're always available. If we're not available, our crew knows how to reach us, and we will get back to you quickly and answer any and all questions that you may have. And people, just so you know, there is no dumb question when it comes to this. There's a lot that you probably don't know, and we are more than willing to help you walk through it.
Thank you, Randi. You sound like a wonderful funeral director, somebody that I would want to go to. I can tell you that right now. Too late now for me, but had I had known, to be honest, I won't say the name of the funeral home that I went to, but I just felt it was kind of cold, especially when Matt died. I didn't like what happened. I didn't know there was a time limit. The guy told me I had 15 minutes at the graveside. And I was like, why? It wasn't even COVID then. But I felt that I was rushed. And I just think that, this is a very important time. And it's very painful time. So I want to encourage people. I know it's not like shopping around, because you're getting married, but you know what? Look into different funeral directors. Look at the different funeral homes. Doesn't mean you're morbid. You want a place and a director that suits you and your needs.
You want to be
so I think it's important. Exactly.
Yeah. You want to be comfortable. You want to be able to talk freely. You want to know that your wishes are carried out. The time limit thing, I don't really understand. I won't say anything more than that. But, our job is to do what you want within, reasonable requests. I mean, obviously we can't do certain things because we're not capable of, but for the most part, we can honor most requests. And, even down to ordering the type of flowers you want, if you choose to have flowers, to providing a military service for you if the person that is dying is a veteran. All that stuff. That's a lot of, all the questions that we have that you probably wouldn't think of are the things that we take care of.
And that gives peace of mind. If your parent was like in the Jewish war veterans, contacting them, having them do part of the services if you like.
If your loved one was a Mason, we can do a Masonic service prior if there's a chapter that's near here or near, that we can get them together. I mean, we'll try and do anything for our families, like I said, within reason. But that's what we're here for. We're here to, the main thing about doing what I do is honestly listening to what the families want and hearing them and not just saying, well, that's not how we do it. We're going to do it our way. That's not how we here at Goldsteins, Rosenberg, Raphael-Sacks feel. We're going to listen to our families.
That's important. I'll tell you what, I was shocked. I didn't know I was really shocked about the time limit because there wasn't, for my dad, he had a Mason ceremony, and then there wasn't a time limit, and my brother died during COVID, and he had a Mason ceremony, and that was longer than 15 minutes. I don't know why.
I don't understand that. The only thing I can say is there is a time limit when you go to a national cemetery because it's military time and you only get a half hour, but that going in. I've never heard of anywhere else that there's a time limit. Yeah,
I was not happy.
I blame you.
to be honest, I was not happy about that. And I had to pay more money because I had it on a Saturday. So because where I'm at was you could have it on the Saturday, but in the Jewish part you couldn't.
Right.
It would have to be on the Sunday.
Right. Well, all the cemeteries in the Philadelphia area where I'm located, they do charge extra on Sunday because they're bringing in their crew for overtime. So it is more expensive to be buried on a Sunday. That's not unusual. The time limit thing, as I said previously, that I find a little bizarre, but I don't know the cemetery and I don't know what their rules are, so I can't really comment on that. It might just be something that they do. I don't know. There's always a extra charge when you're doing it on a Sunday, at least the cemeteries that we deal with. There's also, you got to watch what they call overtime. If you come in after a certain time, the family's got to pay if they have to keep their staff there past their normal hours. So
right, yeah.
Again, a lot of coordinating. It's a lot of
well,
that's what we're here for. You don't have to understand it. That's where we guide you and we help you get through that.
Yeah, you sound. I'm so glad I talked to you, Randi. I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. My mother's friend, his funeral was definitely more than 15 minutes, and it was the same cemetery, just on the Jewish side. So I didn't get that at all. I was not happy. I think I was so out of it that I questioned it, or maybe if I did, I don't remember because my mind was in that fog for sure. But these are questions, folks. I always tell people, learn from my mistakes. Question when you go to a funeral home, if you have graveside services, is there a limit? Okay, if it's military, you can understand that. That was in the military, but if it's on a weekend, is there a time limit? If it's during the week, is there a time limit? And I think it's very, very important to have a wonderful funeral director. And Randi, you sound like a wonderful funeral director. And I have to ask you this: what inspired you or motivated you? I know it's in family business. Is that why you went into that, or was it something else? What motivated you to do that?
I started working here when I was 18 as a secretary. And then, I was going to college. I went local, so I lived at home. I just kind of started paying attention to what my family did, i.e., like what it meant, what they were doing, and how, like, it was interesting to me to help people on a daily basis. And even though we do pretty much the same thing every day is different because every family's different. So it was kind of like not a 9-to-5, in an office job, but it's very rewarding if you can help a family. It's very disappointing if things don't go right and they're not happy. That's frustrating and hard because you never want that to happen. But it's a very rewarding job. But the one thing people have to realize, if you're thinking about coming into this industry, it is not 9-to-5. We are on call pretty much 24/7. I mean, there's a lot of us. We share it, but when it gets personal and it's families know you, they're going to ask for you personally, you're on. You don't have a choice. And it's very emotional when you deal with families that lose young people, or no matter what age. When, like in your case, Betsy, you lost a brother and your mom's still living. Can't imagine what that's like to lose a child. It's the worst. And no one should have to lose a child, no matter what age your child is. So there's things that are very emotional, very hard to deal with, but I really like actually handling those cases. I feel like I'm good at it. I'm empathetic. I can keep the families on track, and yet I can console them and grieve with them. Because as a mom, you just can't imagine what it would be like to lose someone like that. So that's something. But it's tough. It's a very tough job. We joke around a lot. We're silly, to kind of blow off steam. But we, when it comes time to work, we're there, and we really pride ourselves in helping our families get through a difficult situation.
Well, that is awesome, and you do sound like an awesome person, Randi. Folks, you were listening, have been listening. You're welcome to Randi Goldstein Casey. Randi, say the name of your funeral home so I don't goof it up.
I'm from Goldsteins, Rosenberg's Raphael-Sacks Funeral Home.
Okay, thank you. And folks, the information is going to be in the blog. I really highly recommend going on the website because I went on and I was very impressed. And I wish that I could have seen a website like that a few years ago. I really do. And this is why I do my show. This is why I'm passionate. I want to bring resources to help you, to help the audience, to have a better quality of life, to help you in any situation that you might be experiencing in your life. And it was a pleasure talking to you, Randi, and thank you so much. Folks, thank you for listening. Again. You're welcome. If you haven't already, subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. It is for free on Spotify, Spreaker, YouTube, just to name a few. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who is station manager, who writes the blog. So please read the blog. And the information about Randi Goldstein and Funeral Home will be in it. And I want to thank William Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And if you need a support group, and if you're a caregiver, and if you're not, you might be soon, I have a support group on Facebook, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. You do not have to have Alzheimer's. Your loved one does not have to have Alzheimer's. All dementias are welcome. All people from all walks of life are welcome. Alzheimer's and other dementias don't discriminate, and neither do I. And you could follow me on Facebook on my personal page, Betsy, Betsy, middle initial E, Wurzel, Wurzel, and you could just see what I'm all about. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you can be anything, please be kind, shine your light bright, because if we all did that, it would be a much kinder, brighter world. This is your host, Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy. Until we chat again, be safe, be careful, be kind. Bye-bye now.